Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. This is News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Now, much of the discussion this week has been around extortion and the gangs that are operating in certain provinces in the country, more within the Eastern Cape. Now, 2 days ago, in his NCOP briefing, Deputy President Paul Mashatile says government will deal with these extortion gangs. He says that law enforcement agencies will pull resources together in fighting this problem. Now, Mashatile also emphasized that intergovernmental relations must be strengthened before he addressed the challenge of what he calls the high levels of extortion. The question is, can these crime-fighting agencies deal with the growing levels of extortion that is happening within South Africa? Let me welcome my guest, Willem Els, who is a senior training coordinator at the ENACT program, which is, of course, part of the Institute for Security Studies. Willem, good day. Thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Good afternoon to you.
Yeah. Willem, right, it's easy to talk the talk. It's easy to say we have a plan. It's easy to say this can be done. But really, I'm going to start off first with government. Does government know the real pressure of these extortion gangs on what they do to various communities in the country?
Well, I think that is a very good question because if we take one step back, we see how effective our intelligence agencies are, etc. in South Africa. We know that it took a severe beating after of course, the state capture, and we saw in 2021 how unprepared we were as a government and as the law enforcement to respond to the challenges back then. Not much has happened ever since because they started to get their house in order. They started with the amendment of the GLAP or the Intelligence Act. That is still far from being completed, and that is going to start with the rebuilding of our intelligence agencies. Now, whenever you as a government do not have access to credible intelligence that can guide you in your decision making, unfortunately, your scope of what is happening is not what it is supposed to be, but also you are walking and you are like someone who is blind and walking with a stick. You cannot preempt. You always have to do reactive measures because you do not have that intelligence.
Willem, you mentioned intelligence. I want to go to the 2021 unrest where when you listen to the State Security Agency and the rest of the security cluster when they said, well, we didn't have enough intelligence at the time to go ahead and stop this from happening. Are they dealing with a different animal now in extortion? And this intelligence, these crime-fighting agencies, I mean, you have to ask the question, are they still able to go ahead and take on this monster which keeps on growing?
Your problem with intelligence is that whenever you lost that capacity, it takes time to rebuild. It takes political will, it takes resources, it takes manpower, it takes time to establish new networks, etc., etc., etc. So that's not something that is going to be solved overnight, and we have to constantly fight from the back foot when it comes to this. But we have to take back and look at the state of the country and where we are standing in an international setting. If you look at the mafia index, for instance, where they rate countries in different quadrants in terms of the activities of mafia-like gangs and organizations within these countries, the upper quadrant is typically where you do not want to be. And that is countries that are in that quadrant are countries like Italy, where the mafia originated. Of course, these extortion rackets are mafia-style rackets. Other countries there is Colombia and Mexico, and not surprisingly so, South Africa.
Willem, for those who, I'd like to think that South Africans don't live under a rock, that they are aware of the level and what extortion does. But maybe talk to us about that, especially in these poorer communities where extortion really is something where these gangs can go, and it's quite easy for them to do. It's sort of like a bread and butter for them. How are they able to really infiltrate these communities, and how are they able really to terrorize them by any means necessary to try and get what they want?
Yeah, your problem, it starts off, basically three things that you need. First of all, you need violent gangs with firearms that can extort. Uh, Firearms that can be used to intimidate the public. Now, if you look at a recent study indicated that in Southern Africa, that's Zimbabwe, and Mozambique and South Africa, they estimated that there are about 4.8 million illegal firearms in circulation. Now, that's a lot. So, of course, we see that in our daily statistics and news and everywhere, how many gang members, armed gang members are being shot by the police. That made headlines. But that's a spit in the span if you look at how many of these armed attacks are happening per day, from your common armed robbery to cash and transit robberies, to ATM gangs, bombings, and all the other extortion rackets that are ongoing. That just gives us an indication that really we are fast descending into a mafia state. And how are we going to turn around? We can look at the bad. Everybody in South Africa, I think, has either been affected by some sort of crime, or someone they know has been affected by crime in the recent past. It became almost the norm in South Africa for us to because of just the sheer levels of criminality. If you look at the organized crime index, the ENACT organized crime index for Africa, we rate countries in terms of their criminality. South Africa rates number 3 out of 54 states. South Africa rates number 7 in the world. So that's not where you want to be. And that is why, we almost, crime and violent crimes, extortion, all these things almost became institutionalized in South Africa, that it became the norm, and we tend to accept it and we don't fight back. So, the public, of course, we must stand up and we must fight back, but it starts with the state. It starts with the social contract that is there with the government. When we elected the government, part of their contract is to deliver the social goods, and one of them is to create a safe and secure environment for its citizens, and that is not happening at the moment. So that is the challenge. Now, if you look at other countries that had similar problems, and what did they do? Because we have to start somewhere. You mentioned the Deputy President Mashatile mentioned that he's going to act and so on. It's good to stand back and just maybe look at some models that worked. We saw that a while back, a few years back. Japan was in a very similar situation with the Yakuza gangs that started with the extortion. They started to dominate the economy. It became a natural threat for them. And they took active steps. For instance, they made it mandatory by law to report extortion. And they also made it mandatory for you to be clear whether you are a member or you're affiliated with the Yakuza gang. Whenever you want to buy property, whenever you want to, so they started to severely criminalize this. And today, the Yakuza is a mere shadow of what they used to be. But that means that you need that political will, and you need a good and sound strategy from government. But government must also ensure that they are trusted in doing so, and that they are, because the moment that you distrust the government, that they are maybe involved in that, or some of the role players are involved in that, and so on, it breaks down that trust between the government, the state, and the population.
Willem, I want to take the lesser of two evils. You've mentioned the stats there. South Africa ranks 7 in the world. A lot of this comes down to governance. Now, you've got a justice minister who has allegations of VBS against her, right? You've got an MPA that there's question marks because of the prosecutions for some members of parliament who are implicated in the State Capture Commission by the outgoing Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. And the question has to be is, can the governance model right now, with this government of national unity, take these steps? You've got Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who says, look, the police are going to try and really take crime to the criminals. But Can it be done? Is there a way where us as the citizens who pay our taxes to these agencies say extortion can be something in the past, even if it's not this year, if it's not next year, but a 5-year project to get rid of it?
It's possible, like I mentioned, in Japan it worked, but there are some prerequisites. I think it's the ideal opportunity for the government now with a new government of national unity that they can start with a clean slate. They can really start to implement. We saw it was very promising to look at the strategy of the Minister of Police. When he made that, it really, I think he hit the right notes there. And if we can build on that and start to implement that, that is a way to start. Of course, it doesn't help if you've got elements within the government, like you mentioned, that is under suspicion. It's better to deal with that preemptively and decisively in order to restore trust. Because if there's no trust in the government to do this, they start on the back foot anyway. So that is the first thing that we need to do. And also, if you look at these strategies, South Africa is very good with the drafting of strategies. Really, I mean, if you look at all the strategy, if you look at the police strategy, if you look at the crime prevention strategy that we have, they are brilliant, but we are not very good in implementing them. And that is where the shortfall is. We have to start to find a way to implement that. And with policing, I mentioned trust. So a lot of your extortion cases are not reported. It is one of the areas that are severely underreported, and that can be, I think, it can be because of two things. The first thing is of the case of violence if they report it and retribution, but secondly is because of a lack of trust in the police. Is the police involved? Corruption. We don't know, the public don't know, and we really have to tackle that to restore the trust of the public in the police. Because at the end of the day, we've got a wonderful system in South Africa model, the community policing and now the sector policing that is a broken down model. But it is not employed or deployed effectively because of trust levels that are not what it's supposed to be. And if you look at recent studies, you will see that the root causes or the fastest to restore trust in the first place for the police is to tackle corruption within their own midst, and also corruption within your state agencies, because it's not only the police that is involved, it's a lot of other state actors that also been compromised. And secondly is to demonstrate competency. So whenever you trust your police and they come and deal and solve with these cases, it will go a long way to restore the trust of the public in the police. We saw in KwaZulu-Natal, the trust levels in KwaZulu-Natal in recent months has skyrocketed due to some good leadership and some decisive actions by the leadership of the police in KwaZulu-Natal.
Willem, we have come to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
That's Willem Els, Senior Training Coordinator at the ENACT program, part of the Institute for Security Studies. There's two things to take from there. You look at the Stats SA figures that were released, and many people feel they don't need to call the police because the police does not arrive on time. And then talk about the the Eastern Cape. These communities where extortion are happening, these very same victims don't even have data to call the police or airtime to call the police. So it makes it very difficult for them to go ahead and report extortion. Government needs to step up to try and help these communities to deliver basics like connectivity, like data, so that can help them report this extortion. After the break, I'm going to be speaking to Russell Rensburg about the medico-legal claims. Very dodgy. And we're going to speak to him with regards to that. He's from the Rural Health Advocacy Project. Do stay tuned to News in Focus.